What's up, Fox10 Fox here, and recently I've been going back into Crysis Remastered. I've never played the first Crysis game, I will admit, but now we have the remastered version. I've been playing it on my 2070 Super and my 8-core i7 1087-5H. The thing is, when I look at the MSI Afterburner statistics of the i7, it is only getting utilized about 25%, which would mean 2 cores. They say that you need a 4-core processor to run Crysis, and I don't think that that's the truth, so I'm going to put my money where my mouth is and install a dual core. This right here is a Celeron G3900. So it was launched in Q4 of December 15 at about $42 was the recommended selling price from Intel. It has a whopping 2 cores, 2 threads. It runs on the LG1151 socket, which is what my dad runs, so I was able to actually get a PC that I could use this on. And it runs at about 2.8 gigahertz. It's got a total TDP of about 50 watts, so you're not going to have any issue pushing power through this thing. The question is, will it give you the power back? If I didn't tell you the GPU, that would be a little bit scummy. The GPU in his build is an R390X, and like you, I was worried about the fact that this GPU would bottleneck the CPU, considering the fact that Crysis loves GPU and only utilizes about 25% of an 8-core CPU. But that definitely was not the problem. The R9 390X is about 7% better than a GTX 1060. I tested a GTX 1060 with Crysis in a video that is going to be upcoming in the future, and it runs very well. At medium settings, you'll get about 60 FPS. And to say I was pleasantly surprised in the fact that the GPU would not bottleneck was an understatement, because again, I was worried about the validity of this video, but trust me, let's get into the results. So, in fact, the game runs at about 60 FPS. However, the issue with it is that 60 FPS only shows up when it's not stuttering 24/7. The CPU was utilized at 100%, and the GPU was sitting anywhere between 30 and 80% utilization, so it definitely was not the GPU holding us back. The stutters were terrible. It was running at 1080p, and turning down the resolution would not have done anything because of the fact that it's a CPU-bound object. However, I did turn the resolution down, and as I suspected, it didn't do anything at all. It didn't smooth this out. If anything, it just made the game look worse. So, sadly, it seems like a dual core will not work for Crysis Remastered, but all hope is not lost. If you have a dual core, but it's got 4 threads, I think you would have a much better time playing this game. I really don't think that this needs 4 cores, as they say it does, because it only utilizes about 2. So having 2 cores with 4 threads and maybe hyper-threading would probably still give you good enough frame rates if you have something like a 1060. You're not expecting to run ray tracing on it or anything like that. The build also has 32 gigs of RAM because my dad does Photoshop and things like that, so it definitely isn't held back in that regard. And it was running on an M.2 drive. I must warn you that if you decide to play Crysis Remastered, no matter what you put it on, it is an incredibly slow loading time for each mission. It is unbearable and it takes you out of the experience. Crysis, honestly, it was $30 for a tech demo. That's all this was. And you know what? For what it is, I think that it's worth it for somebody like me who likes to benchmark cards and stuff like that. But the story is really not that great. The graphics, honestly, still kind of just look like the original Crysis. Seriously, even ray tracing isn't implemented correctly in this game. But the lighting does look very nice. But if you would rather spend $30 on a CPU that's probably better than this one in your system, or $30 on Crysis Remastered, I'll recommend getting a CPU that's better for your system. Don't go this CPU that okay, it says i7 7700K, but that's just because the dual core is already in the machine. But this CPU here was $40. The G3900 was $40, and I feel like it got ripped off considering the performance of it. When you can buy a first-gen i7 or even a second-gen i7 for that price, and you will get 4 physical cores instead of 2 cores. So these things, for some reason, haven't depreciated that much in terms of price, which means I can sell it back pretty easily. But it's still not very worth it, in my opinion. I think that you have a much better time trying to get an older 4-core instead of getting an LG1151 socket motherboard for a dual core. Although it does give you the chance to upgrade to a 7700 or even 9700 or 9900K in the future, depending on what motherboard you get. So maybe getting a dual core and an LJ1151 socket would be worth it in some people's cases if they really say, okay, I know I'm going to upgrade. I just need something for a few months before I can get the money for an i7 or an i5 or whatever. And in that case, maybe. But to be completely honest with you, the use case for this CPU is very, very slim, especially now that the new LGA socket is out. I don't think that it's worth it anymore. Granted, you do have a lot of upgrade options, so I think that I will give this definitely not a recommendation. You have much better ways to spend $30 than a dual-core CPU. You can probably find a 4-core CPU for $30. So, thank you very much for watching this video. That was a review of Crysis Remastered on a dual-core. If you liked the video, like, subscribe. Do what you usually do, and as always, buy yourself something nice.